다 가르쳐도 다 된지 식지 직도 봐 준주 식디 준주 맞아 그래서 준주 봐
준주 the pilot
네 다디 년을 직처럼 질러다 이러마 식지 셜로가 직러다 년
So Rinpoche picked out a couple of verses from Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva from the 4th chapter. I will remember to give Christine the verses so that you can have them later. So it's verse 43 from the chapter on conscientiousness, the 4th chapter, and it says, "And to do this will be my sole obsession. Holding a strong grudge, I shall meet them in battle. But disturbing conceptions such as these destroys disturbing conceptions, and for the time being are not to be abandoned."
다 대들 요모 셴발라 따도 치르미도 바차 대란다기 현자신 콘도 손 율도 제 율제데스 다 당하라는 줄라 된저기 삼로디 저기다 망체지다 배정하고 그래 다또 지기 라마 상부지던 제제 아니 동해래야 다 탄되디 아니 치 동행 많이 봐 낭sem기 아니 쇠베 까년디 낭sem 터네 매바 쇠세 삼로 여디니 지라 아니 딜리시니 계제들라다 마소네 조악하야지다 린당 조악하스나 고르바
테스트
and
so in terms of these 4 lines, which I'll just read again just to help because you've only heard them once. So it says, "And to do this will be my sole obsession. Holding a strong grudge, I shall meet them in battle. But disturbing conceptions such as these destroy disturbing conceptions, and for the time being are not to be abandoned." So this sort of quite sort of different way of thinking for us, but but we have had the opportunity to for ordinarily this is quite a sort of difficult way of thinking, but we have had the opportunity to meet with some very sort of pure or excellent masters, and those who are able to describe to us the sort of not just the sort of describe the way not to just to be free of suffering, is kind of external suffering, but internal suffering as well, and particularly the way in which the mind is the cause of many of our sufferings. And so this then they've sort of been able to give us a little bit of the taste of that sort of wish to be free of those sufferings.
So for many of us, this view of the mind, where in the 4th the chapter where Shantideva says, maybe it wouldn't make much sense, but for the people now who has kind of a tired of the suffering, to tackle with the suffering from outside, but now only hope is to bring down the suffering from inside. Then this verse becomes, I think, in the tantric practice, we have this from the like a special divine pride, where it talks about the subtlest wind and then the mind and so on. But in a sutra, the person who really wanted to now bring the Dharma from inside, and this is the one of the motivation needed, especially people who is going to study, meditate, and to kind of do some kind of accumulation. I think this is a kind of an energy booster. It is very important. 다때네 디 가르치는 개침을 차그요래 슬라나 다 단다 봐도 아주 다 세비점에 치료기 다지로 아도 지기 난기 묘모 도숨라 아주 다 단다 봐도 할람 지기 다토요 말해.
So why is this important? Because up to now, for most of us, we've tended to view our enemies as being external to us, but actually, and generally, we haven't seen that the actual enemy is the internal enemy of the three poisons.
이제 인도 참배 다 된제기 아니 녀모 받들라 갑대 잡에 갑라 아니 아니 렐하버지 여러베스나 아니 디기 랜들 디 타마디 딱 안된셔다
십주셰시요.
넘버 10 녀모 바세치도
okay. And so so then if we sort of think, well, is this process of sort of facing up to, taking on and challenging this internal enemy of the three poisons, is this easy or not? And so then verse number 44, the verse following this from chapter 4 reads, "It would be better for me to be burned, to have my head cut off, and to be killed, rather than ever bowing down to those ever-present disturbing conceptions."
다 된제기 심슈 된제지 마제비나 아니가 최고 돈달로 쏘당기 최고 돈달라 녀게니 지기 김려 당기 봐 되니 최고 돈달라니 칼이 최고 나가 지기 인세 섬로디 용약으로 매비선로 지레도가
and so then but if we in terms of if we don't have this kind of context so the context of not understanding this way, but sort of, and then but then just saying sort of, oh, for the Dharma I'll give up my life, or I'll give up my family, whatever we say in terms of what we're prepared to sort of give up in order to practice the Dharma. If we don't have these kind of contexts here, then we won't. It won't actually become a reality. It won't really occur.
The one greatest example, Buddha Shakyamuni, before he became a Buddha, before he became a monk, and all the having the facilities of what we really need in our life, he already have that. But then still he wanted to what maybe we say he's searching for a happiness. But what kind of happiness is, in order to first he is not just like, oh, what is happiness? Not like that. It's more like, what is the troublesome? What is the most problem that I always get into? The problem is the new motorists.
So the mental afflictions.
The mental affliction. Outside mental afflictions. Affliction. 제가 ngaranzugi 다 삼로다 당부 대화 가르래 신지 제 용역 삼로주 열에대 이나양 삼로하고 싶다나 ngaranzu 단다 대화제야 될래장 동의에 매버서야기 삼로디 슈체 레고니 손럽지.
And so generally we tend to think, our way is to tend to think of sort of what is happiness, and then also thinking about how we would search for to seek out that kind of happiness. But perhaps what we should really be thinking is what's the method which would be able to remove our suffering, and searching out that instead would perhaps be a more productive way of thinking.
디 인도점배 어란주 단다 지시도 랑규기 다이어바 티시도 아니 말이야 지기 심 시월 내지 용야민도 랍토베이나 아니 되네 그것도 이네 아니 딜네 타르나치 마로 냐 벨로지 릭서바
and so if as long as we don't have this sense of this understanding this enemy within our own mind stream, then as long as we don't understand that enemy and understand the need to destroy it, then as long as we have that in our, then there will be no possibility for us to really attain the kind of peace that we desire. But if we have then the understanding of that enemy in our mind stream and have that sort of wish or thought, wouldn't it be wonderful wouldn't it be amazing if I were to be able to be liberated or overcome this enemy? Then this is sort of then the peace could come.
제장가 상지 준비 되기 아니 와랑주기다 랑규기다 묘모함 당신티 아니 매 당신티 매버 쇠라 아니 컨디스 매버 소거래 근데 아니 남샤준도 치르기 다고 아랑주 매버 컨디스 유스 디나 신시지 름범마 손에 뺄레 름버 숨 중반나신 된라야 름버 숨다 뺄레야 당보 가리 연구를 세도 아랑주 다들 콩르시고 사데나 and dreading it Sametango, sometimes somebody take it back. Dreaded Sametango, Sametang and Hagurbe, Zawa Hagurba, Zawa and Meba Sevala, Sametang Silva.
So then,
dreaded Tubsha was heading.
So then, in terms of this way that we start to understand of how the internal, the internal enemy in our mind streams, that particularly the self-grasping, and therefore understanding the need. So the Buddha has taught us about this, about the internal enemy of the mind, the internal enemy in our mind stream, particularly the self-grasping, which needs to be eliminated, and then thinking about how we're able to eliminate this internal enemy of ours. Then the Buddha also talked in terms of 3 examples and then three deeper meanings of that example. And those sort of examples were sort of posited in terms of how to eliminate an external enemy. So the first sort of example was to destroy completely all of the, from the root, all of the external enemies.
So most when you feel that you so much kind of anger towards enemy, what is your behavior is you want to punch him, you want to kick him, and you wanted to just kill him, right? That is how you wanted to destroy your enemy. So now as this kind of behavior, if we do this on the person, external, that is such a wrong behavior. There's no way that you can get a peace out from there. Even you have kind of won the battle, but somehow the hatred or some kind of the guilt will be there always. But the inner, the enemy, that sometimes we never touched or never recognize this kind of enemy. So for that, if we don't feel this kind of the inner enemy, which is the self-grasping, that we really need to destroy that. If not having this kind of motivation, there's no way to bring liberation. 제장가 마란주기 난기 뇨몰이야 자타 마토기 봐도 아니 다디 뽕두기 삼블리기 말에 다디 자원이네 매버스웨기 삼블리기 미두잔베 아니 다디 모신 다디 임바 카체 지기 디뽕두기 삼바디 슉치르치르치르 땅야디 땅아조 땡데 양나 중니기 코아코르단데라 삼로단지 니 아 코 동현리야 내야디 레다 뇨모고 지기도 레다 뇨모니기 가리간도 지기 가르쳐 그래 쇠답지 지기도 쓰네 레디야 멤버 제제 요거도 레디 양 가와니 멤버 제주고도 쓰되 미시 몽보디기 당 대배원 지기도 쓰 디 삼로들 레온도 잠베 아니 랑신리야 다디 머리바디 매버스 마스는 지금이도 세 삼로데 다자면 쇠당디 삼로 지부지냐레스
and so one second. And so then, in terms of this understanding this internal enemy of ours, of the mental afflictions and the self-grasping, and as long as we're not able to see these states of negative states of mind as being our enemy, then there's no way for us to sort of even to sort of identify, to then have all the other ways that we would wish to, using the external analogy, the ways in which we would wish to destroy our enemies is such as first of all the need to identify the enemy, and then the other forms such as completely getting rid of right from the sort of root all of our enemies. If you don't, as long as you're not able to even identify or see these as the internal enemy, then there will be no way of actually destroying them. But if we are able to, and there'll be no way for us to develop our strength in our ability to be able to challenge the enemy. But if we're able to sort of through in the meaning, the deeper meaning of the example of being able to understand the process of the 12 links and understand how the mental afflictions are what drives the process of keeping us in samsara, and how this process is the entire process of the 12 links is also ripened with karma, and how that is driven by the sort of confusion of not understanding, or because of misunderstanding and not knowing. And then if we understand that process in relation to those of the 12 links, and then if we really understand that we can't we won't be able to get rid of our suffering or achieve the happiness unless we are able to destroy these internal enemies. Then through this process, there's an opportunity to work to destroy them. But if we don't even recognize them as our enemies, it's not possible to go to engage in any of the further process.
제상가 된제기 단대기 배당부되기 아니 배당부될 때니 아니 냠년 체당디 좀 된디 술을 송버리 시도점비 아니 단다 년도다 랑제절이야 아니 랍자디 견체 아니 가르쳐 그랬다 니 기부 숨비나네 기부 딩들와 아나 타바점지 터번도 년지라 아니 람디 땡고레스 람디 라고레 송체 아니 라바송게 냠년도 좀 땜버봐
And so, in terms of this, in this the first example, where this is in this first example,
배당부디 산제 줌된디기 두자 술을 땜버레스디 년도다 랑게 졸을 땜버레스
가르이네 페이코랑 그래서 차원이
차원에 매버 쇠세 달다고리 답매버 쇠당나시 아랭아란주 녀몽 차원에 매버 쇠고레세 랍자디 술을 송.
Yeah, so then this first example is the example of thoroughly destroying the enemy from the root, and therefore once we understand that the real enemy is the internal enemy of the afflictions and self-grasping, so this example is spoken of in the context of for which particular kind of sort of practitioners or level of practice is this did the Buddha speak in terms of, and this is these methods of practice are spoken of as advice to the vehicles of the hearer vehicle and the pratyeka, the solitary realizer vehicle, and then in terms of the practitioners, the scope, the three different scopes of practice and practitioners, then it's spoken of for those who wish to achieve only liberation, and so for the practitioners of the middle scope, and then the advice that the Buddha gives to the practitioners at this level in relation to that example of training for instance, in the 3 higher trainings. So that is at this first example is at the level of the practitioners of the middle scope.
다테네 ngaran chubi ani yang dal khabde chang chikdi ani dadi zawani meb sogodo de samlo mebche dadi enyegi chobongolu gyurgins
Chokbo.
dadi chobongolu gyuni ani nye dadi meb sugin se samlo chik yonguro bas.
So then there's another sort of like the second example, the way of trying to in an example of having to sort of challenge or take on our enemies. There's the method by which we try to befriend to befriend our enemies in order to sort of to prevent ourselves from having an enemy. So we befriend them. This is one other strategy we can say.
So if you can, that is one powerful mind. To become a friend with the enemy and then destroying the enemy. Very skillful way. But sounds kind of sometimes very impossible. Okay? 제장가 딘디기 빼디 좀 된디기 술로 템버레스라나 전주 선발 템버레스.
So this example of befriending the enemy in order to destroy them, the Buddha spoke about this example in relation to the practitioners of the bodhisattvas, the practitioners of the higher vehicle.
제장가 아니 상기기 전주 선발 졸이야. 아니 제장가 대바당 시베 사바당 대다 탐지 신전집에 양라를 배제당당 러부도와 대바당 시베 사바 대다 신전집에 양라.
So this is the sort of these are all the sort of wish here is for in the terms of the wish for the welfare of others. So in this context, how the Buddha is explaining this is in the context of the wish for the welfare of others.
So Bodhisattva's motivation to come back to samsara, to help sentient being. That means if he is under the sway of the negative emotions, then no way of benefiting others. He will seem like us. But so now he uses all the chada. Ani the 탐지, ani 신륜 시비기 쳐도, ani 왕 파tur지 용도 잠배, ani 전주 선바. Any Kyawalamba Karasadu, Shending Chitri.
Sorry. So what the bodhisattvas do is to take rebirth over, so to gain some control over things like desire or their sort of wishes. So they get some control over them, so that then they can and then they take rebirth in order to be able to use such things as a desire for the welfare of all the other sentient beings through a sort of mastery of them.
제장 국갑 과들에 다 지금에도 버진나루와 버진나루라 아니 가서 가서
오디
레네 넘버 디게 셰세줄 레 넘버 게 셰체 전주 선바 아니 신전 집에 양라라 아니 레 넘버 게 송에 주어라 다 버진 값을 물어봐.
And so there are sort of it's described in the Prajnaparamita, the text related to the Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, where it talks about eight kinds of karma, which are sort of branches of sort of practices for the welfare of others. So there's they're described as eight kinds of eight kinds of karma.
먼저 마리비군의 랑네 겨울년에 전주 선발라 마리비군의 말랑바체 아니 가리군의 랑은 자원인지 신비군의 랑.
So in terms of sort of doing practices and because America they couldn't learn it gewa saying
머리 아주 깨발랑단데 머리 붙고는 나는 깨발랑단.
Sorry, yeah. So the way of taking birth for ordinary people is driven by the ignorance. We take rebirth, but the way that the bodhisattvas take rebirth, returning to samsara and taking rebirth, is driven by love and loving kindness and compassion as the sort of motivating force.
Only compassion is not strong enough. It should be a great compassion. 제장가 닝지 친구 꾸니랑 아니 다 레디 배주단요 말이 레기 왕도 도는 디기가 말봐 아니 레기 사들라 몰람기 면엄 지마베 삼자고 요래
So then this driven by this great compassion, but we can't sort of combine that with karma, because it's not possible for these beings to still get complete control over their karma. So in the place of where you would normally have ignorance and karma, you have great compassion, but then you also have these kind of stainless pure prayers combined with the great compassion, through which they then take rebirth.
어디체? 다 되네 양 요모를 갑자기 자단 찍디. 요모 다 가시 달이야 아니 수수 뉴도 첨부 계제 봐 수수 또 첨부 차원도 전배 아니 니에코 유역을 이야기 세줘 봐.
So the one, if you another way of sort of this way of challenging, taking on enemies and trying to trying to find a way to sort of eliminate the enemy is also would be if you have an extremely strong, powerful enemy, then maybe you would sort of become like a servant or to them.
No. Oh, that's other way around.
So you try to make them your servant.
Yes,
sorry,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
He didn't have a coffee this morning.
no, I did have too much coffee.
So it will be so powerful. It is a very kind of a sweet revenge. If you become more powerful than your enemy, and then you take the enemy as your slave. Okay? That will be the super powerful way. That's a complete the enemy you have destroyed, and then you are making use of your enemy. So powerful. This teaching Buddha has given to the people who are suitable for the tantric practitioners. 제장가 ranju dandang 이거도 제장가 묘몽 요보 구단데 아니 묘몽기 묘몽 표주 땅 같을 때네. 뇌자 표주 땅 같을 때네. 아니 가르쳐거든 이시 차례 표주 땅도 봐.
And so in the tantric system, what you do is you're able to sort of gain control over or a mastery over the sort of afflictions and then these negative states of mind, and be able to take them as a servant to yourself and to use them. So these states such as attachment, and then we use those, take them as a kind of servant to us. Gain mastery over them, take them as a servant, and use them in order to help us generate sort of primordial wisdom. So that's the process, the way in which Tantra works.
제장가 아니 빼잉지무 쉬우지 송야를 가르친 거라서도 아니 말한저 묘모 도숨을 깨버리 안주 묘모 도숨을 깨버 teller더니 인들기 묘모 배절 당니 묘모 매우수기.
So then is a beautiful example in the Tantra.
Example memche, labdantche. Example surely.
Okay, so the way they talk about it, the way they talk about it in the Tantra is taking the three poisons, the mental afflictions, and using them in order to destroy the poisons and mental afflictions.
Saying we are born we are born, our kind of father and mother is like the father and the mother is like leda nyomo, the karma and then the afflictions. We are born from that. But in Tantra, what it says, with these, the same that we have within us, this the emotion, negative emotions, I will use this to destroy my negative emotion or the grasping. Like the good example is the bug, the bug which is born from the tree, it eats the tree.
Yeah.
So, che zangata rinpa dindri chigi sum song yongye dila ane dindri ki tsa chimbo chigi dindri che dindri tsa chimbo sum dila ya ane nganzo ki chigi tsurimi laba shiri song we towa ne ane nyendu dini ki labja kyunbe ki che gor chigi dene ngaranzo ki chanju simbe dene le zambe che gor chigi ane 상하게 추줄 때문에 저거지 딘지기 추 사모디 가리체도 송샤 슬라드 잠베 드라메베스에 치도
Ja.
Meint das, was Shanti Deva sagt, wenn er sagt, wenn wir etwas hassen, sollen wir den Hass hassen? Kann das übersetzen?
It's what Shanti Deva says, if we hate something, we should hate the hate.
We hate the hate?
Yeah.
Hate the hatred. Hate. No hate. Here, no room for hate. It's more like, first you translate, then I...
So then we have these sort of three stages, or three different strategies for dealing with our, methods to destroy our enemy. And so in this sort of vast sort of array of sort of Dharma teachings, then here in the for the hearers and solitary realizer vehicles, there it is taught with a strong basis in ethical discipline. The first kind of process or strategy for removing the enemy is taught, and then the texts and advice and texts for in relation to the second example are taught for those of the sort of bodhisattvas of the Mahayana vehicle, and then in relation to that third example, the texts and practices which are given to those who for the tantric level. But these are all whichever one of these it is, all three of them are for the very purpose of destroying the enemy. So they all have a kind of similar goal.
제장을 다 단단히 얘기 rinpoche 고야기 tumzen 조보디 가르레 슬라베이나 되게 단단히 배 숨단 직단데 이마 갱기 송주지가라 간난체 디셈블 편보시다 총.
So the reason I'm speaking about this is because and sort of trying to put together these examples and the deeper meaning of the examples is because one of my teachers spoke to us, taught me in this way, and I found it to be I felt it was of great benefit.
제장가 딘디 갱기 송주 낭차베 쇼델레 갱기 가르송조스나 아란조 아니 망부지기 아니 지기 도초기 지기 년도 되니를 송비 최고되게 나로라 아니 뇨모견도다 뇨모로 자르다세 기제딜레 딜레야 갑대자에게 삼로스시라 장되면베체 이 뇨모 방도의 삼로도 마제베체 아니 디니 신의 지기 전주선배기당 아니 하와동아하기 흉내 베네 아니 뇨모 방고 말이스 아니 뇨모 람도 키래요 세두잠베 아니 셈나로라 오 아니 디제기 균의 뇨모를 다다 껴마다 치지 뇨모 방에 주여위나 아니 대양지 깔레시다 자모부터는 지금 두두두 삼야디 안간주기 단다디 림바용당 상지 좀 된디기 림바용당 자원은 받도록샤브레스
사원에 가서
자원은 맵서브레스
so yeah then
림바용당 쓰고다 림바용당이 자와죠 봐 자와 가르치나 뇨모 매버 쓰고야다 셰당 매버 쓰고야 자와 디리스다 그런죠 Di nalonin dangzing meba suya da zawarwa. Di gujo chuna maadang bachi, ni lagwa changar dorna, ni sanje chumden digi goba torbarista.
So then the Buddha then sort of after the teaching that my teacher had given me, then he sort of gave some advice to say that the Buddha had also the reason these three sort of stages are spoken about is in terms of if we don't have a sort of it's starting with that first sort of analogy and the meaning of it, and in terms of at that sutra level of the hearers and the solitary realizers working to seeing the enemy, seeing the internal enemy of the mental afflictions, and not and then wishing to seeing them as an enemy and seeing them, wishing to destroy them from their root, the enemy of the mental afflictions, and of course underlying this attachment and hatred of the root of the self-grasping, and sort of, but not really. In some way, if we were to get the sense that we didn't really get a strong sort of wish to abandon and sort of to overcome the enemy on the basis of that. But then if we particularly then we look to this third level of example, and where it talks about where we don't really need to sort of fully abandon the afflictions, but we can take them on the path, and we feel, oh, that sounds we don't have to see in some way we don't have to see the afflictions as the enemy, or we can instead take them on the path, and it sounds like that's a much less complicated, much less difficult way to do it than what is being said to us here is this is a wrong understanding of what these examples and the process is about, because the very basis of all of these three examples is the way in which to destroy our the afflictions and the self-grasping.
So when my teacher taught this teaching, and then at that time there are so many good practitioners, and then people, some who practices Chagya Chenpo and Dzogpa Chenpo, we have plenty of people there. And then my teacher, he practices Dzogpa Chenpo very profoundly. So then the one person tried to get a private audience with him to ask like a very important question. So I was kind of the bodyguard for my teacher. So because he's spending so much time giving teaching, and then he need to take a rest, so I don't allow anybody to meet him privately. But then he said he has very, very important questions, and then I thought like, yes, why not for him? So I made an appointment with Genla, my teacher, and then my teacher spoke him almost for an hour, and then he comes out with the tears. And then I was wondering what really happened there. And then I checked with my teacher, and my teacher said the person who has so many great lamas and teaching, he got so many teachings on Dzogpa Chenpo, how to generate the rebirth very quickly. And then he said, now through your teaching, what I learned is, unless I don't tackle a little bit with self-grasping, there's no way to bring this rebirth. And then it is, are you saying this just in a publicly, or it's also for me? So then my teacher also shared a story of his life before, how Dzogpa Chenpo was so effective on him, and then he tried his best, but he didn't reach the goal, and then he thought like that would be very stupid to just stuck there only. And then he took a step back, and then he went through the help of the Nagarjuna, and then the Achantakirti's help to realize the she rang shimebe.
So the base has no inherent nature,
The
inherent
inherent
existence.
the 그래서 그래 다 유기 따와다 유쟁이 따와 얘기나네 유기 따와티.
So this, in terms of the view in relation to the into the kind of object, the objective view, and then or in the view in the basis of the mind, the subjective view. From this here, this is the he spent more time looking at the view of the view of in relation to the object. So this lack of inherent existence of the base.
So unless you don't know quite profoundly about Nagarjuna's way of presenting the selflessness, there is no way to bring Rinpoche like that. So, and then he said, now up to now, what I have put effort, so kind of he felt like kind of effortless there. So my teacher said, no, it isn't, but it brings to your paja, this imprint. So in the future, when you realize quite a good understanding on the selflessness, what the great Nalanda masters has presented, and then after there will be a period of time where you wanted to not only meditate on the object, this selflessness, but also the mind, which is meditating on the selflessness. Then Rinpoche will definitely work. So that was a message to him, and then he was very inspired, very felt joy, because he found totally that now the most important, the base.
Foundation.
So the foundation. So that was the one great teaching. Why I organized that teaching at that time was many of us, and then especially the people, the earlier generation, they cannot connect to the all the what we study, that they don't see some relevant to bring a Dzogpa Chenpo and Chagya Chenpo. But then they study all this, saying like, okay, this is Nagarjuna and all this. Now I studied that, I had enough of that. Putting all that aside like a piece of garbage, and then they try to find out something else. I saw this. So my teacher was expert on combining this together. So I organized that teaching from my teacher. That went quite successful. Very helpful. You were there too, right? Okay, now going back to the question. 제상가 hatred 세야디 패전 인지 측체비네 dislikely 아니 숙체어 봐.
Yeah, so it's strong. In the English word hatred would, I think, have this much stronger connotation than just disliking someone.
Normally, if you even you hate somebody deep inside, you will say, I don't feel quite uncomfortable with that guy, but I don't like hate. Yeah. So we try to make that kind of clarification. Yeah. But the hate is how do you define hate?
Hatred.
Because the hate,
it's not just disliking or not liking someone, something.
Destroy the other person. You want to do harm to them.
So this comes on the fact that it has to be sort of conjoined with some kind of wish to harm, a harmful intent.
They destroy. So normally the hate you have towards the outside enemy, you have this hate, you wanted to destroy that person, his life, his career, everything you can destroy, and the hate you have is mission successful. But here, this hate is, now if you look at this self-grasping, how it really been so much influence on you. Now you use the tool. Which tool are you going to use is the emptiness. The emptiness, what it reminds us is there is no so much grasping, or there's this so korangi ngwe gone ane da se ji tsuktu ji yongya yo mare. Dina shin nga zo nyomo sinare dangzin se de lu tuba ji go ne le sha jo ji re ma do ji gi ji sinyi ba ji da se du su yong che nga zo ne ji sha ba ji yo mare. Se de tambe hatred le gi shi go ra me ba.
So then so what we start to understand is, using this emptiness, what we start to understand is that there's no sort of substantial, solid, solid sort of existing from their own side kind of. There's no enemy like that, actually. That this is made up. That kind of idea of an enemy is made up by our mental afflictions, by our mistaken forms of mind. That's where that idea comes from. But actually, there's no kind of enemy like that at all. There's no real enemy, and so then we start to understand through this way of thinking that there's no actual basis. There's no foundation for hatred in relation to someone we call an enemy.
No real enemy is not you na.
No real enemy.
Right.
No, you mares.
The one that you na. It is.
Guess I knew what they get. Kalapa Rinpoche Sonju na the Gitenchiki, Sud Lama Chiki, Lama Keta Chiki said, oh, Trish, come to Rinpoche.
Come to Rinpoche.
Call a song, they Nala da mess song, because of Janchiki Sam Ginyam Gitola, and he da mess, dressing done, how any mess, Nala.
No teacher Jurda.
So Rinpoche asked me if I should use the word, there's no real enemy. So one of my teachers was teaching called Kalapa Rinpoche, and he was very close to Nyingma Lama called Kamta Rinpoche, and Kamta Rinpoche was very renowned for his practice and in relation to bodhicitta. And at that point, one time, Kalapa Rinpoche related the story of how Kamta Rinpoche had said that he didn't have any enemies at all anymore. He never had any enemies at all anymore.
Then we can debate with the Rinpoche.
That's how it's debated.
If there's no enemy, no patience. Right? If there is no enemy, no patience. And then if you are Buddha with no enemy, Buddha with no patience. That will be very... So what real this true means of something ultimate, something truly existence, that where is this enemy? So you cannot identify like directly there. So on a relative level, you say, because through this harm I got, so I call this enemy. Through this kind of bring happiness, I call this is my friend, family. But there is no solitarily something, it's like truly there, something that we can say this is a friend, this is enemy, this is me. So it gives us a room to know to grasp something, grasp one. That's the whole point. Then this becomes, I think, a true fifth instruction.
The fifth instruction.
Instruction.
Number 5.
Otherwise, saying I don't have enemy, it's hard to take like directly. Yeah. 어디지?
Yeah.
Okay. 다디 인도점배 하란조 다단다 개제주디 녀모 하란조 있다. 단다디 브레이크 데 말레고라야 당아조 까마주지 다트린데 바릉 스당체 까마주지 곰격인다. 가르다고 인슬람나 다 ngale 지단이 메지나로리아 자세다 년세다 망부주스 하바도 얘기 메지나로라 내게니 자세야데 아니 녀모도 som당 하바도 당신기 치기도 앞에 지금 부서도고 돼야지 지금 용사디 다도 좀 당신기 연구도 섬제 아니 섬로 디간을 녀라 아니 샤네 다디 매버 마서나 ngai tibu tsawani ne yong samare samche dadi nyala ya azu to chigi kama chuzi nyal chig komshi jago.
So then, before we take a break, then we'll do a little bit of meditation. We'll sort of have a slightly extended meditation. So we'll meditate for 10 minutes, and then we'll take a break. So what should we meditate on in this period? And then we should imagine that in all of our lives, throughout our lives, we talk about having enemies and friends, but actually we should really understanding that the most harmful enemy is the enemy of the three poisons, the afflictions and self-grasping, and understanding that that enemy, those enemies are the ones which have caused us great stress and caused us to be caused us difficulties and great stress and tension in our lives, and so understanding that they are our enemy, then they also understand that if we're not able to overcome those, to get rid of them, then it will not be possible for us to be happy. So think about think about those things for 10 minutes, and then I'll ring the phone.
10
time.
Okay. Now meditation can be very powerful. Once your focus becomes very strongly, and then one of the good example is if you are so focused, and then how the distraction cannot disturb your mind. It's more like you have some very important thing to do. You are thinking, and then your friend is talking to you, and then while he's saying so much, and then you are thinking about the plans and what's happening, and then your friend asks you, "Are you with me?" And what did I say? Repeat after me. Whatever I say, repeat. You can't. So like this,
So there's one of the categories of mind in the text is something which appears but is not ascertained.
This is a
mental state.
One good example. So now, sometimes when I meditate, my meditation not very stable, but sometimes when I'm quite convinced by the logics and reason, and then I try to meditate without doubts, and then you feel so drawn into this. And then sometimes while looking in the computer just here, and then it's not like the computer disappears completely, then it will be a mess. So you cannot see the computer, and then somebody, a kind of a strong noise or something comes like hello, and then slowly you can see the appearance. So that few times happened, and then that time, because you are really into it, you cannot directly feel the pain of your body. Yes, because your body maybe builds a little bit of stress, little bit, because we don't really have the real shamatha. Then builds some kind of effort there, but then you feel this pain wherever there, here, you feel slowly. But the real time of the shamatha, no way. So that's why the pliancy semre, lusim shinjangi dewa, sayatigi, ani gom jabala, ani jurumbu de tuya di karesidu, ani semde, because zejidu ne tuya dang, jurumbu de tuya karesana, jiderun dundu do nyambara shaba sayadi, jiderun dundu do sayadi, luida sem nigalo, ani 중고 참여직간에도 스파 대토야 지다 하바도 류기 대화 개발진 쉬우직 대버 될 때니 아니 가서를 샘대양 아니 그게 유del이야 유del이 냠바 샤벨 로바직도 와.
And so, in terms of this, talking about these sort of special, sort of almost like blisses, the Shinjangi Dewas and the happiness that la kobodo.
No, a sense of fitness.
Ah, okay.
When you have a sense of fitness, like being very well trained, then it's exhilarating.
So there's two kinds of this. What is sort of termed sort of pliancy. These are the mental and the physical. And so when we're in these sort of refined states of sort of concentration and meditation, and then when we're able to achieve these forms of sort of fitness or pliancy of the mind and the body, then we're with that then when we sort of, however then much we wish to sort of abide on remain on an object, then from the body, it's like our mind and our body have gone sort of into a sort of slightly subtler state almost, so that there's a kind of special kind of physical sort of something like a bliss, but in terms of our body, in terms of the physical sort of sensation, and then that also then supports the mind to be able to remain for long periods of time abiding on the object without distraction. So this is sort of so that's how those support us in order to be able to remain sort of single-pointedly on a focal object of meditation for as it said, for however long we wish.
Something that we can learn, I think, we can learn from children. The children have a very strong the focus. So whatever you give others, but he really needs that. He's so into that, right? So that's why he has more kind of a happiness, joy there. And that's why sometimes we say, I miss all these old days. The best time you remember, oh, this is the fun part, best part, because there's no much kind of responsibility and you are so focused. So that's something I think one good example is that when once we are a child, we had this kind of experience. Okay, so now we take a break and then
Okay.
무사지에 베기 죽지 매도점 리라블링지 네데게 파디 상계 생도 맥데 우바이 저그 남닥 신라 제파쇼 기담 구루라나 만달라카 네야다야비
사시미지 주시면도 좀
리라블링지 네데게 파디 상계
신도
신도
미디에 뷰바이 저그 남다 신라
제파쇼 예담 구루라나 만달라캄 네야다야미
다들 아주 흉무실마 직다위나.
So then if we start to look at the text again.
다 페이지 3디 디비전 디멘로 10제 주체 되네 스티바티앙 강 직제나 세들베
네,
라레
라레.
다 스티바디 카르레 세베나 스티바티앙 풍봉하데 간시 냐왈람발 레 세랍도 중원이 풍봉하이랑 신도 리버차우스.
So then the place where we left off yesterday was it's on in the English. It's on page 6, the second paragraph on page 6, where it reads, "What is existence then? That existence is also the five aggregates. That which completely arises from appropriation is understood also of being in the nature of the five aggregates."
저장가 다 스티바시니디 님 풍봉하던 우진체 갑직 야 고 레리아 원진체단직 고 니용도와.
So then there are two sort of the branch or this limb of the 12 link, the link of the 12 links of existence is here is being identified as the five aggregates, but it's also identified as karma.
제장다 디거도 들이야 제장 항아를 니버 뒤지기 샤베 아니 소반 니버 뒤지기 소반 남시기 띵도 샤베 바자디 아니 레 니버 투치 투진 줘봐. 투진 땅마당 세야디 아니 가란주기 아니 세바다 렘바니기 치고 그랬어. 제장가다 세바다 렘바니디 매버스에기 탑셰텔라 아니 세바다 렘바 치고 간데 매버스고도 상나마당 버치 디고도 땅에 통과를 해서 디케상 랍제티 프로스와.
And so, in terms of looking at the process of the links, and then from the sort of karmic formatives of the link number 2, and then from that, these sort of potentialities or being laid down on the consciousness of the third link of the consciousness, and then they are sort of awakened or sort of strengthened and sort of almost like awakened by the two links of link 8 of the craving and links 9 of the obtainer or the appropriation. So they are then sort of strengthened by that or sort of empowered by that. And so here, this is also that in terms of we're not just because sebadigi chipu machebeche chipu
세바다 렘바니기 아니 쇠답야디 까바 디까지 대바자마 임바 안 되게 자와데 등심해보셔야 디간 공부를
but what we do here is not just to think just in terms of trying to eliminate the 8th link of craving and the 9th link of obtaining or obtainer or appropriator. We also look to we don't just think of that, but we look to destroy and eliminate the self-grasping from the root itself with the wisdom of selflessness.
그래서 root 시도 대 통매 말이 베게지 시험하지 뒤죽구롱도 줘 말이 봐. 통매 말이 베게지 시험하지 뒤죽구롱도 내가 그런 염도 용어에 말이 버들 갑자기.
So not just thinking of the root this when we talk about the root of the self-grasping, not just self-grasping from beginningless time, but particularly at the time of the karmic action, that because a sort of motivating factor of ignorance, that's the one we're sort of particularly looking at here.
The beginningless에 된데 양나 중요되기 당보게 말이 봐디. 딜레다 이제 갑자기 짜도 그래도 저 단다 개치슈디 레당 묘모니기 잡로들라 가두기네 로고체디네들라 저버 친주로 로지요리스 저버 친주로 로데 아니 고 가상님아 계절 중간나신 고 따고전배 당진 아니 미장월라 장월전배 모두 상호 여러봐 대다 탐지기 잡들라다 저는 다도 전배 당진디 요리스 딜 매버 소원아 아니 신에 대다 탐지 마 시바가 토야디
and so then when we're sort of what we're talking about here is when we're talking about what is it that we need to really focus on in terms of sort of counteracting and trying to eliminate, then it's not just this sort of beginningless ignorance which has been there since beginningless time, but we have to identify it very sort of carefully what kind of ignorance that is. And so the karma through many forms of mistaken grasping, as I mentioned before, such as there's all kind of thoroughly mistaken sort of ways of grasping, such as, for instance, clinging to something which is impermanent to be permanent, or something which is unclean to be clean, or impure to be impure. Those kind of mistaken minds do have an influence in terms of the karma and mental afflictions, but all of those stem out of this the mistaken grasping to the self, the mistaken view of the self. And so in order to stop existence, that sort of mistaken view of the self is what we have to specifically sort of counteract in order to stop the process here of existence.
다테네 류당 나다 이길에 넘버 숨 차량 딜레 사마온비 풍봉을 준비나 시바시저 타니도 스달 레랑라야 아니 시바시제 맹다그리스 가진스는 깨와 치미기 아니 풍붕아 펜벌치비 차네 안텔라양 시바시그리 시드 잠베 딘데딜라 아주 귤라 디비밍다 세트리 귤라 디비밍다 세트
And so then the text reads on where it says here, it is called existence because the five aggregates. It's called existence because the five aggregates arise from the maturation of the three types of action: the body, the speech, and the mind. So here, what it's saying is that so it's calling. So here, existence is sort of labeled as being karma in some way. In the text, it's speaking about that. But what this is doing. So the three of body, speech, and mind, the actions or the karma of the body, speech, and mind. But here, actually, what that's giving is applying to the cause, applying the name of the result to the cause. Do the double mean double? Yeah.
귤라 디비밍다
Yeah. So applying the name of the result to the cause.
제가 디난로 단다 트랜슬레이션 나를 양 세드왜 류당 아당 이기레 나버 숨차라 양 세드 양 세드
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
다디 디차 저장 양더디 인지미 고고요 그전에서 양더 고야 가르스나 아니 시바스니데 가르스도 풍봉하는 거지 제. 다 이때 양가 주는 게 낭선도 교배 안 시바스야디 레랑 거지 지기 있어. 레를 가르치는 거지 지기스도 레 딘데디기 깨와치마 펜벌 치기 여자 엔 딜라야 디 시바스그레 시도 잠베 양더 고고.
And so normally so this there's a particle in Tibetan yang which is being used in the here when it says the body and the speech, the body, speech, the karma of body, speech, and mind. Those three aspects of the karma also again or also is how the word is being used. But what usually existence is, we often identify existence as being the five aggregates, and particularly the five aggregates of the because it says here dele mayombe pumbo. So the kase the maturity this document the kase
fight between translators.
Ranching to Rinpoche House. So it's so it doesn't come across very well in the translation. So the three aspects of the body, speech, the karma of the body, speech, and mind. From them, dirwa the 레데기 숨기 레스 마용베기 풍부 충분레스. So the future five aggregates arise out of these three different forms of karma, the karma of the body, the speech, and the mind, and so they are said to be and so these because of three types of karma are said to be existence. In sorry, I forgot what the last. So these three types of karma are said to be existence, but they're the karma which throws, which is the throwing karma to produce in the future the future aggregates of the person. So there's also these two ways in which existence is talked about as being the karma, but also as the aggregates as well. So because the gula double ming double gumin dabade. So this is a case of where the name of the cause being applied to the result.
Yeah. It's a very simple way of thinking, okay? So what is samsara? Siva Kwaseti.
What's this? Yes, what's the...
So the five aggregates. Okay, very simple. So then in this Juba Siva, this on the 10th, number 10th.
Yeah.
Also, actually, how it recognized is it's a throwing karma.
Yeah.
Throwing karma. What through that karma throws what is the next life. That life, the existence, another five aggregates. Okay, so here chazanta dila tada di kapsu tende yang la juning nang zindi jubi juba siba tela yang any siba syllables.
So then so this existence within this 10th link in of the existence within the 12 links is also said to be existence as well. So that's
Also,
how it's being
so
presented.
that also is missing in here. So and then now most important part, if you will go through that, normally we point out samsara. When do we use samsara? What do you expect from samsara? We say that then something is not going through your own wish and from outside, and then you use this line. Never used that your physical form when you get pain, suffering, and also how the conditions from outside gives you some contribution of becoming unhappy. That how you grasp towards this, the mind, how it works, everything we don't say. This is real samsara. You never said that. So now this, if you look from the page, the starting page of the 26, and the end, now we are almost the end of this 26. So there, all Chandrakirti is turning towards our five aggregates, not on the other people's and the outside situation. Never there. So that is one takeaway from this. That didn't imagine doing that. She dosa tell Lungagi Lenny Sujinji Pongura Shin Las. That you come to him.
So then the actions of the body and speech are in the nature of the aggregate of form, it says.
The ne Yigi Lenny Pungbunga Irang Shinde, that did not know Pungbunga song to the pageant in a Pungbu Shi Rang Shin is Tanda.
So then it says the actions.
Sanskrit has 4.
Oh, okay.
So then it says the actions of the mind are in the nature of the 5 aggregates, but in some of the commentaries, and Alex is saying in the Sanskrit, should be 4. The actions of mind are in the nature of 4 aggregates.
풍부시령 신데스 대ਦਰ 시버디 풍부가이노 시셔버자고 스타 시버스니데 카르레스나 풍부가레 스타 딜랍토고레스.
And so we can say that, so it says in this way it should be understood that the 5 aggregates are existence. So what is existence? It is the 5 aggregates. We can that's how we would understand it.
다들이기 레텔라 때니 아니 가리 용거를 땅 아주 깨와디 단대가 아주 깨와디 또 슬래버레스.
So then reading the next line of the root text where it says from that existence comes birth. So then from this existence we talked about in terms of karma comes a new birth.
어디 다들 시버틀에 깨와 중세도 잠베다 디긴 자와들라 마옹비 풍부 중앙이 깨와이나 대양 시벌레라도 중앙 어스디 다 집어도.
So then it reads, the future emergence of aggregates is birth, which fully arises from existence.
다테네 깨와 중스도 잠베다 깨와 되게 주 대마타도 아니 가릴레버스도 것이 다는 양에다 맹아 된제 동에당 이미 대단 초반은 대다 깨레랍도 중 스타디 하고 시주도 다디
And so then it reads the commentary reads from this rising of birth, from sort of entering into birth, taking birth, then it sort of it gives us the results which happen from that birth. So then it says the future emergent of aggregates is birth, which fully arises from existence. And then after that it says, old age, death, sorrow and suffering with crying, anguish and agitation, these are from birth. So immediately having taken birth, then all of these things will then arise.
You two went to help him? How is he doing? Better?
Yeah, okay. Taking a rest.
Oh, that's good.
Eating
Okay.
meat soup and blue tea.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's good. Okay. 다 되네. 디기 딱 대다 깨려라도 총세에 디기 딱 알아서 디카도 될다. 삼로 개치슈지 땅에 될라. 아니 단다. 알아서 나와 상집에 최디 다 최현당 아니 민자베 토네 동해기 원신치 남체 아니 차바 두지기 동해시 딜라야 원진세체 아니 디 원진체 당들이야 남전나로야 니순체 아니 두지기 동해세 가르스나 레뉴 상황제 레다뉴면 상황제라 아니 두지기 동해시 명다다 즉 되네 찍대라 아니 동이 침 가장 아마니 있어로 동행 아마니기 땡이 지기 위치하네 아니 도지기 동해에서 지금 문진나야 됐다 디네 되는 거랬어.
And so in terms of this fourth line here where it reads so these thoroughly arise from birth, which is the last line in the Tibetan. And then so in the Buddhist teachings, what makes them slightly different from other sort of forms of spiritual teaching is that there is this particular identification of suffering and specifically the identification of the pervasive conditioned suffering. And so in the text on Compendium of Pramana by Dharmakirti in the Pramana literature, it's there are two forms of the pervasive conditioned suffering is identified in two ways. One is the something which is under the power or other-powered by karma and mental afflictions, and the other one is that which is formed on the basis of the two other sufferings, the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change. Also, change.
제장가 란주 딩문진 제베갑라 얘기 개인기 따바르시 가르송 거였다. 란주기 대계산직 휴사래. 제장가 아니 다께가 나시 애를 하바동 란주기 딘지기 동해 민두고 망보슈지 용야디 가와네 레송 슬라드 잠베 애를 남상 깨발렘바디기 최송 랍토에 중보이나 아니 깨와디 간적 가르기 최송스들 애를 레다 요모기 최송스 아니 레다 요모니 딘지기 샤만라 아니 가르치는 도바레스디 아니 풍부고랑기랑 신고랑 아주 풍부기랑 신고랑 레다 요모기 샤만라 도 살아봐 슬라드 아니 신에 고 갑되잖아 갑되디 breakdown 체체 자토 살아봐.
And so then in terms of these different these identifications of what the meaning of the pervasive conditioned suffering is, I think also yesterday I think I mentioned about this in terms of how all of the process of birth being one of the big problems, the unwanted all of these unwanted sufferings that come to us essentially come from actually taking birth. And why does that occur? That occurs because of from being under the power, under the sway, other-powered by the karma and mental afflictions. And so by the power of the karma and mental afflictions, and so then under the power of the karma and mental afflictions, then the five aggregates therefore are therefore become in the nature of suffering. And so if we sort of break down the process in this way, we can start to see how to counteract it.
디인두선베다 변화 다 개월렘베기 아니 까니 다 개월렘베 까니 되진 송도 개월렘베 까니 데이터 고조 인두선베 아니 나라 소바 중앙주로 대다기 시아바네 손돌 지들 리바체데 세던 도디 설류장베 도딘스레 설류장베 도에 값소 아니 강송번나 시지 마 규인스
근데 그새 쇼단데
십제 제주 차지
되죠. sorry. 양기치로.
대다기 셰바니 도지도와 신도 리버 차데 세디게 아니 단다 디월치
Oh, they got it. Right.
that's right.
Yeah, got it. So then it reads on underneath those the second two lines, the first two lines of verse 9, where it reads, so the meaning therefore is, sorry, Rinpoche. Sorry. So it says, it's in the middle of the page 6. It says, with birth, which is the cause old age and death occur. This should be understood in accordance with the explanations of the sutras. And specifically here, I think this is referring to the rice seedling sutra in particular.
제장가 다 된다 도나로라 근데 송요르슬라 송비나 산지 좀 된디게 테라 가와 세티 아주 에이징 세티 봐. 더 가와니 풍부 용수 민바고.
And so then referring to the Buddha says in this sutra, when referring to aging, it says here, old age or aging is the maturation of the body.
So normally our thinking of aging is a little different. So when the baby is born, we see this like the first in the hospital, or the baby is delivered.
You delivered,
Delivered, and we cannot say the baby is aging. We cannot say that. that will be like
day one.
That will be not a good way to, not auspicious. Yeah. So minute you are born means you are aging. Oh, that's a powerful teaching, isn't it? 제장가 풍부용수 민바이 인장 풍부용수 민바이 뱀바당 아니 aging 차차 그래서.
So then when the body is sort of maturing, this is what we talk about with aging. This is what
then the definition of this aging is much better than what we label aging. So then you will, if outside physical you look healthy and something, even you are 80, 90, you don't feel aging anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And then more problem is to tell you the right age. I have so many friends who told me that you shouldn't ask somebody's age. So in India, it's kind of okay, and the Tibetan community is pretty of course you will say without any. But then in outside of India, they say, be careful, there are so many things you cannot ask. So one is, you don't ask the other people's age. If the person is maybe like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, then proudly you can ask. But then you are little bit more than that, and then, so it's a big deal. But then, if you ask yourself, what is really aging, then you don't have an answer for that. It's more like if your outside physical is like it's
so very sort of healthy and so if you've really got old and really aging,
and then we say aging. But then if you say we already start aging when we are born, it gives you some kind of a relaxation. So this is much more healthier than normally how we keep in our mind. This age limit should be when retired, pension, and then you start making this.
Getting old.
Then it's difficult, 아니 다 치워서야지. 치워니 개비 풍부 직바고사.
So then so then it says the text says, what is death? Death is the destruction of the aging aggregates.
게비 풍부디 지바오스도 잠베 아니 치워서야디 아주 삼로 땅당 니시지 치워서도 잠베 루심 카트바당 세디기 나와 도바다 계지셔야 되라 치워서 계지셔야 요르데 아주 치기 요래 슬라비아디 그러바 치기 요르셔야 돼 아니 신의 깨월렌 차바당 치에 고주를 써야지 치워서 리셔
깨발렌 차바당. So then
풍부지게 가도 고주래 풍부지게보다 풍부지원 균형을 봐.
So in terms of we can think about this. Actually, we can think about death in two sort of aspects. One is that way in which the appearances of this life subside, and the sort of the aggregates and the conscious, or the physical aggregate and the consciousness separate, and then we that form of death. But then even after that death taking a new rebirth, even from that first moment of rebirth, we can say there's a death because death and birth are simultaneous.
So still, according to that, I can say I'm dying. So then you don't, in order to say that, you don't need to be in your last end of your life. You don't need to wait for that. Saying I'm dying, probably you can say that. 제장가 니디디브체. 풍부지보고스. 다 냥에니 로싱 치신비 군두몽비서 오버 차바데 집에 닝기 동하오사.
And then, so the next part of the text describes as sorrow is the profound torment of the total obscuration of the manifest attachment that accompanies death.
다디 딜리아 디 tonda 세부지 하고 마선데 이내 고가지 가르잡 초고도 슬라나 다 당기 변화 가와 당시에 아니 치와 이내리 아니 가르 내바 이내리 간지 지가바 까님 지 간지 좀바 이나야 고 렁신디 유어지 로디기 요르데 거기 렁신 유원 줘야 될 켈레마도 버체지 고 어디 간주 싸와지 서저 잡지 알아봐 아니 변화 아주 치워디 가지고 주리 슬라디 좀비 깨버다 치워 고주 레슬라베데 말라베체 아니 간연로도 마선 치워서야디 아니 타마 우 체갈 하버데마도 치워켈레마도 되지 아니 가와 게디 가와는 고주브르시디 깨와당 가야 고주브르실 말라베체 가야서야디 로페진 지금 미지마 손에 상황 조갈 하고 시갈 하고서 되는 신의 가야도 샤운도 좀비 아니 대조 상황을 주기 디 가르소를 디르지 까니나 나로라 까니는 자치 맹아 다디르다 냥행해서야 돼 까니해서야 돼 디난 주기는 그래서.
And so here where it talks about sorrow, and I'm not this is something I'm not sure if it's maybe another way to understand this would be to in thinking in terms of all of these sufferings and difficulties that we face, such as aging, sickness, and death. But what but there's one way in which we've sort of made sort of trouble for ourselves by basically taking instead of understanding the nature of these things in terms of the fact of such as the changeability, everything changing. And instead of not being able to accept that, what we've kind of made up is a kind of new sort of definition or new entity of what these things mean. So not as it's described here in the text, but for instance, when we talk of death, then what the new sort of entity or new way that we've think about death is that death just means that when we're right at the end of our lives and we're about to take our own breath, that's what death means, instead of thinking that the very fact the very birth itself is a kind of death as well. And then in terms of age, again, not thinking that from very birth we're already aging, but instead thinking that age means reaching, getting to an advanced age, and again very close to death, and that's what aging means. So we've sort of created these sort of different meanings, different from what's described here, and this is what is creating our sorrow or difficulties.
사다테니 응어바 차바다 집이 냥현이 다들 명아 된바니스 명아 된바니 냥현 이군이 랑베스 아 줘바고스.
And then it says crying or wailing or crying is the verbal expression of the pain that has arisen.
사다 제장가 어런주마 손에 명아 된세디 까니지 중지 아니디 쿄토미도스 까니지 유디스 디셈나로레 쿄미도스에들바 I cannot take this burden.
I can't handle it. Something like so. In terms of when we talk about here, sort of crying out or wailing out, this what this means is that when sort of difficulties come to us, we just can't manage them at all. We can't cope with them or manage them.
Cope with it.
Cope with, we can't cope with them.
제장가 if we accept the reality like this, in samsara, actually we cannot complain anything. Because it is going as how the causes and the conditions are already there, it is going through that. So saying like, I can accept it beautifully. But then, most important is how, because this is those the legion dig namsha, good jig, then the young juniki, Rimba Yongdandi. 중아망아마 되는 디부치마치마지 뉴점베 다 주디까나마 도지기 아니 디조 참말레 레레레레 까니레레야 아니 셈나로레베 지 가르치는 영어를 슬랍나 뭔디딩 순럽지.
And so, in terms of this whole way in which that we've been describing this process of the links of dependent origination, and the way in terms of karma, the cause and effect works, and how previous causes then produce the future results, and if we sort of trying to figure out what each, instead of looking to sort of destroying the causes in order to stop the results coming, if we just look at each individual thing that arises and wonder why it happened, then this is really not a constructive way for us for our minds to think.
다 제정한테니 둥에세야되니 아니 옹봉알로 내봐오스.
So then it says suffering is the harm that the five senses receive.
옹봉알로 내봐 세드웨. 옹봉알로 내봐. 제정가 아니 당아란 주 된제기 옹봉알로 내 아니 옹봉아데당 얘기 세번이디 파카가샤치 옹봉알로 내봐당 아니 이름 never said yi midewa yidu miwon paba said dini khashadwa.
So then, in terms of when it talks here about harm to the aggregates, then perhaps we'd a little bit separate out the sort of the mental consciousness in terms of and thinking that how does harm in relation to the mental consciousness would be a mental unhappiness or a mental being, because yidu miwon was saying.
이제 내가 다가라도 돼. 이 미데와니 yidu miwon pabaos 다가라도 로션도.
So then it says suffering is the damage that aneo.
그럼돼.
In the middle aneo. So suffering is the damage that the five senses really. Anguish. So anguish. Sorry. Yes. Here. So it says anguish. So this sort of mental unhappiness would means the occurrence of sort of the sort of appearance of unpleasantness. Yeah. So this maybe instead of anguish, it would be mental unhappiness. Is the arising or the coming of unpleasant appearance.
다디 ngamaddi tang ngama ongbu tanda 가츠고리 동해세 문진 chedan디 ongbu ngala nedang tang 아니 이실의 nedang이 또서 로가 셰액들 금전 요ris.
So there's a reason why we sort of differentiate between the sort of harm to the sort of the mental side of things rather than the other side of the aggregate. So there's a reason why we want to differentiate between harm to the aggregates as being different for
제가 그래요. 옹봉하기 셰발라야 초와 민대와 깨버기나. 아니 이시구주 초와라 민대와 요미 캬바케요 말했어.
And so sorry, there's a difference between the harm to the sort of the mental consciousness and then the mental consciousness and then harm to the particularly to the five sense consciousnesses. So, for instance, here in terms of talking about unhappy feelings in relation to those minds. So, if there's unhappy feelings if there's harm from, it says literally harm to the five sense consciousnesses through having unhappy feelings, there's no pervasion. So there's no pervasion. There's not necessary that for that person there must be harm or unpleasant, unhappy mental feeling, unhappy feelings in the mental consciousness.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One good example for that, that is one of the best teaching I ever had from my teacher. When I was very young, I used to read a comic book. And then because that time my English is not perfect like right now, so I just look at the picture and then I try to make up my own kind of the imagination. And so I love this special comic, which is the Angulimala comic. So which in the sutra, Buddha talks about the story of Angulimala the Great. So Angulimala, if maybe people who are not familiar with the story, the Anguli means the finger. Mala is thumb. And then the mala is the mala. Rosaries. So now I'm not going too detail of the story, not that relevant, but so in there, because he become once he used to be such a sharp-minded, very devoted, and a very intelligent person, and a student of one great master, non-Buddhist, and then somehow he went through such a difficult time, even he being honest, then so many problems came, and then somehow his life become miserable, and then he cannot handle it anymore. Then now there becomes one hatred to everybody, and then he started killing so many people, and then especially there was one person who said, if you wanted to become so powerful, then I give you special teaching, and then if you collect 100 and something people's thumb, and then you can do this kind of sacrifice, and then you will get some special power to achieve something and so on. So he was really into this because he wanted to be like now. I really wanted to show how powerful I can be. So he started killing many people, and then he become a very well-known now kind of a consecrator, chapa, like a robber,
bandit,
the
like a
bandit.
yeah.
And then, when the time of it's the time of Buddha. Then, when Buddha, through omniscience, he came to realize now the time has come to tame Angulimala. And then Buddha sends his all his disciples on another way, and Buddha said, now today I need a time alone. And then he went to the path that nobody dared to go, so where the Angulimala is there. So then finally Angulimala was so happy to see one human being there, and then so he can collect another one thumb. So then trying to chase Buddha was very difficult for him then with others. And Buddha showed so many kind of miracles. And then somehow Buddha's give teaching that now with this power what will you do? And now if you can get more power, that you can get the liberation, which you don't need to grasp, you don't need to look for so much kind of hardship of this sort of thing, giving teaching, then somehow then Angulimala felt so touched to the Buddha's teaching, maybe especially the teaching on the dependent origination and emptiness. And then he surrendered to the Buddha, taking Buddha as a refuge, and then he wanted to become a monk, because not like I wanted to become like you, not like that, because the teaching he has given, it is becomes so relevant to him. So he has a mission, he has a goal to achieve in this life. And so he wanted to become a follower of Buddha. So Buddha took him in his ashram, and he ordained him. And then he practiced so well, and then because due to his strong imprints of the past, he can understand so much better, and the realization was so quick. And then Buddha always tells his students, you should become like how you practice is. You should practice like this bandit Angulimala. So becomes an example. And then many of the students, there's a little jealousy obvious, right? So saying like, how this bandit can become the arhat, or no self-grasping, no way. So then what happened was, when Angulimala, as the normal follower and a monk of Buddha, so he needs to go for begging alms. So, and then he went to the place where all the monks have, like, you cannot go to the same places, because then you become very familiar, you connect, you become so friendly with the families, and then there it is not supposed to happen like that. So they make like, you go there months ago, so now you go to this place. So they have this kind of system. So Angulimala's turn came that he need to go to his own village, where he killed so many people. So without any kind of a rejection, he went. So he went there, and then some people came to know this is the Angulimala. And then they start to, even though I said not going to detail, now I'm going too much detail. So, sorry about that. So then they start beating him, and as we say, beating him to the death. So hardly he cannot walk anymore. He was crawling towards the ashram to see the Buddha. And then what happened was, in the comic, what I can only understand, I can see the crawling and lots of bloods and everything. He went to see the Buddha, and there's the part in the comic, the Buddha giving him a water, and then asking something I really don't know, and then still I can see the smile on the Angulimala, and then Buddha looking at him very gracefully. Then he passes away, and then there's Buddha saying Angulimala has under the tree he was giving the sutra. That was the picture I only got when I was very young. So when my teacher, when he gave this teaching, especially this, what we make it differentiate between the
the feelings sort of concomitant with the sense consciousness, and those concomitant with the mental consciousness.
Then he tells the story to me, and then he said, when Angulimala was so hurt and the bloods were coming and then everything, and then Buddha asked him, is there any pain? And then Angulimala, without any doubt, without any kind of effort to say something a little bit fake, but honestly what he said is, due to your kindness, there's no pain. So it was such a big message that which I didn't get from the comic book. so saying, and my teacher looked at me and said, there's so much pain. Maybe he can say like all this you heard, maybe he's crying out loud with the pain. What does that really mean? No pain. So now he differentiates between this, saying, "Chasanga, lushi kurgyu choala, dongye yonayang, lushi kurgyu choala, dongye yonayang, yishi kurgyu choala, dongye yomares. Karjensena, yishigi karing yedi yor sido zambe, lushi di karsagol, lugi shebalo chume, dongye di dagir chigi yomares."
So then, the way to sort of differentiate this out, to explain this, is to say that so that the physical, the suffering, which is the feeling of suffering in relation to the body here, the physical consciousness, the body consciousness, and then that in relation to the mental consciousness. So there was suffering in relation to the sort of consciousness related to the body, and then, but not in terms of the mental consciousness. That there was no suffering with this feeling. There's no feeling of suffering of the mental consciousness, and why was it the case that there could be a suffering on that physical, a feeling of suffering on that physical level, but not the feeling of suffering on the mental level? And that's because they hadn't. There was no sort of grasping to mind in terms of from the mind side. There was no grasping to that. Yeah, so they didn't identify that. There was no sort of real identification, self-identification with that, of the suffering on the physical level.
So this is when due to the kindness of the Buddha, as Angulimala said. So now Buddha and all his students seen from his own experience that how changed or how much his practice is so strong. So then Buddha said, Angulimala has attained into the liberation. And normally we haven't come to that point, but still we have a very examples in our life. because for an example, maybe say, for the first time when I drank Coca-Cola in my life, it was such a bad taste. So, such a bad taste. And then I stopped drinking it. But slowly, I started liking that drink. So, if we investigate that about us, the taste you didn't like, because the tongue and the feeling of the tongue didn't enjoy that. But now, when it becomes the kind of habit, from your mind, it starts saying it's so good, so good, so good. So then you become this familiar. That's not a familiar. I think the tongue has kind of developed this kind of thing. But from your mind, it started accepting this is so good, this is so good. Could be this one example. And also, people who wanted to make a beautiful tattoo, very expensive tattoo. So it's very painful actually. But then you are doing it even it's very painful. But they are so proud when they do it. So then in the mental level, there's so much pleasure there. And then this is why it is done by one piece. It takes hours and hours. You don't complain about the pain anymore. So, there are so many examples like that. And especially if like a treatment, like injection, nobody wants to put a needle into your skin or your But if it says like, oh, this can cure so much, and then you give so much money to put this into your body. So that time, sometimes when you see the hope and so much, and then you gladly take it.
So even on the physical level, there's suffering, but on the mental level, there's no suffering. There's no suffering at all. But on the physical level, there is.
Any yi mi deva digi, any yi want yi wongbo ne dang zo pang jin sung do.
So then the reason I was sort of talking about these things here is just in relation to here where we talk about the sort of the damage or the harm that comes to the five senses, and then the five physical senses, and then so there is mention to suffering, and then this mental unhappiness, so mental feeling of mental unhappiness, which is the harm which comes to on the kind of on the mental level. So that's why I was sort of talking about the things I've just discussed.
Okay, so now we take a break.